Today, the false reporting that a suspect had been arrested became a big part of this story. CNN led several news organizations in suddenly reporting the false information early this afternoon.
Well, if we have information, one of our sources is from our national security contributor friend Townsend. One of the sources is a Boston law enforcement source who tells me that an arrest has been made.
The suspect has been arrested in the Boston bombings.
I want to be very careful about this because people get very sensitive when you say these things. I was told by one of these sources who is a law enforcement official that this was a dark-skinned male. I'm making a personal judgment, forgive me, but I think it's the right judgment not to try to inflame tensions. They say it is a dark-skinned male.
According to the AP, the suspect has been taken by U.S. Marshals to a federal courthouse.
We're looking for obviously any kind of movement if the suspect has in fact been brought there.
Now, this was huge news. Big crowds began forming outside the courthouse in the belief that the bomber would soon be taken there. While many news organizations were racing to air, NBC News was careful and deliberate.
What we've been told by several sources that there is no arrest.
All of a sudden, the story on some other networks began to change. Look at the banners on the bottom of the screen. They began rolling it back.
We're getting some conflicting reports about an arrest.
A third top federal law enforcement official is saying to us now, so that makes three, that no arrest has been made.
There has been no arrest, and in fact, a suspect has not been identified by name yet.
This federal law enforcement source that just communicated with said significant progress has been made, but no arrest. Anyone who says an arrest is ahead of themselves.
A reporting error in a painful situation is bad enough, especially with victims and families, and so much of the country eagerly waiting to see who will be brought to justice for the murders in Boston. Still, mistakes do happen, and we all understand that. But there was another part of this failure that deeply troubled me. It was what the CNN reporter John King said when he was describing the person supposedly under arrest.
Well, I want to be very careful about this because people get very sensitive when you say these things. I was told by one of these sources who is a law enforcement official that this was a dark-skinned male. I'm making a personal judgment, forgive me, but I think it's the right judgment not to try to inflame tension. They say it is a dark-skinned male.
Dark-skinned male, coded, offensive language. Here's how the Washington Post media writer Eric Wemple wrote about this. In a story like this, reporters justifiably feel pressure to pass along any and all details that they extract from their law enforcement sources. After all, why wouldn't you? Well, in this case, you wouldn't, because dark-skinned male is useless information that borders on inflammatory. King apparently approached this tidbit with a mindset of restraint, saying he withheld certain details that he learned from his killer source. So why did he put dark skin into the same basket? If the police were searching for this individual, what assistance would the dark skin description offer? Should King have mentioned that the suspect had 2 eyes and a nose? Not 2 eyes and a nose, but a dark-skinned male. These comments are very offensive. They have no place in our discourse, especially in a time when Americans, inspired by the example of the people in Boston, are coming together as one. What King's word did is to make every dark-skinned male in Boston a suspect, and that's shameful.